Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to Sunday night, recapping Week 12. Josh Jacobs goes for 48.3 PPR fantasy points, and I missed the end. They took it off Red Zone. It wasn't on TV, and I was like, how did they score? I wonder, oh, my gosh, are you serious? Josh Jacobs, incredible game, and we got more to talk about. I am calling Week 12. I came up with a very clever nickname for Week 12. Week 12. The week when the quarterbacks threw passes to receivers that nobody cared about and did nothing for our fantasy teams. What's up, Dave Richard and Heath Cummings? Dave, welcome back from your Thanksgiving trip. I hope it was great. Good to have you back.
Thank you. Good to be here. I did not go up against Josh Jacobs in any of my 17 leagues.
Really?
I don't know how that happened. And I only have him in one league. It's the podcast league, actually. So Sam, the intern, and I crushing it in the podcast league. Jacob's a huge part of that. You asked for an answer to a question before the show started. You wanted to know if Josh Jacobs' points in PPR were the highest of any non-quarterback this year in fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a player who did better than him in week 9.
Yeah, I forgot about him.
Wasn't that long ago when Joe Mixon went off for a monster game. But he didn't have 300 total yards. That's pretty good.
Pretty good. So I do think this is the second biggest game.
It is
for a non-QB, but I don't think the quarterbacks beat him 48.3. I'm Lamar Jackson. Oh, Tua had a 50-point game in there, I think. But amazing game. Heath, who is the biggest winner? I'm going to pause. I'm going to give you like 3 seconds to think about it. Heath Cummings is here. Follow him at Heath Cummings SR.
I think it's a combo of the two guys that I'm going to steal one of Dave's winners and one of my winners. It's the New York Jets football catchers. Anybody who plays, and there we had this quote, like it was an ominous quote, I believe from Zach Wilson's first week of real practice, and I believe it came from Garrett Wilson, and he was talking about how the other guys throw a more wide receiver friendly ball. talking about Zach Wilson, and then after the game, their head coach, Mike White, made the easy look easy.
Yes.
They're all just so happy to have Mike White playing quarterback. And I think we should be really careful about getting too excited about Mike White. And we should remember what happened in his second complete game of 2021. But it's an enormous upgrade over Zach Wilson. And I'm feeling Garrett Wilson was one of my believe it or not, so we can just throw it off the very top of the show. Elijah Moore is alive again. His teammates were chanting as he was being interviewed that E is free. They were all happy that they have somebody that was throwing the ball to him. Garrett Wilson is a top 20 wide receiver for as long as Zach Wilson is not the quarterback.
I think I have to believe it.
Oh,
top 20. You said top 20.
I did.
And I said, I believe it.
I do these, like I always bump these up a little bit. I had top 25 and I knew everyone would believe it. So I made it top 20 and it still came in at like 80% believe it, but I'm sticking with it. I'm not listening to the public saying that's too obvious, because I think Adam probably disagrees.
I paid real close attention to this game. Here's the note that I wrote. Garrett Wilson is showing his talent for sure in spite of inferior quarterback play. Meaning that as long as he doesn't have a total dingleberry playing quarterback, he's going to be good. And Mike White, look, for this game, Mike White was great. I don't know if Mike White's going to be quite as good moving forward. Heath, you already mentioned what happened to Mike White last year. But if White stays or if Flacco takes over, as long as it's not Zach Wilson, I feel pretty good about Garrett Wilson because he's such a talented wide receiver. Good at getting open, good at breaking away from coverage. I wish he'd play the defenses like the Bears every week. He's going to have some tougher matchups, but he's just very talented. We've gone back and forth on him all year, I should say. I'm settling on him as a number 2.
Is Dingleberry FCC approved?
We're a podcast, so it doesn't matter. But as long as Dave doesn't say that on CBS network television, I think we're okay.
There's a reason why I'm not on CBS network television anymore.
Yeah, I'm not going to believe. I'm not really willing to go into Elijah Moore. He had 2 targets in this game.
Yeah.
And I just want to point out on Garrett Wilson, he had a 54-yard touchdown catch. I'm just telling everyone, I'm not dissing him. Where Eddie Jackson, the Bears safety, got hurt on the play. It certainly would not have been a 54-yard touchdown catch if that didn't happen. He fell down and That was the last
Did Garrett Wilson break his ankles?
No, that's not what happened. You saw the play, right?
He was running a route, and the guy who was trying to
It
cover
was
him
a
hurt his ankle and fell
non-contact
down.
injury, and he wasn't trying to cover him. He was behind him. That's not what happened. But just top 20. We were just talking about Chris Olave being top 18 to 20. Juju's in that boat. So it's just there are a lot of guys that have. He's good. Sure, he's right there. I mean, he's got 3 close to 100-yard games in his last 4 games. 2 of them were with what's his stupid name? Zach Wilson. All right, let's go to our biggest loser. Dave, you want to give us the
D.
biggest
Barry.
loser?
His name is D. Barry.
D. Barry. You want to give us the biggest loser?
I think we're working on a loser case for Mike Evans, who's really been struggling the past couple of weeks. He got some deep targets. He was clearly involved. He had 9 targets in the game from Tom Brady, but another game, 2 for 31, just really, really terrible numbers for him. It makes me nervous to say, oh yeah, just keep starting Mike Evans. No worries. I don't know if we can necessarily do that anymore. I'm sure someone's about to ask me, Mike Evans or Garrett Wilson rest of the season. That's it's the fact that I'm hesitating tells you all that you need to know.
What do you think? I would go Evans.
He gets the Saints next week too.
Oh crap! Then I'm definitely going.
He's got the Saints next week, the Niners after that, and then the Bengals, Cardinals, Carolina. Look, I think he can right the ship and find the end zone.
The Cardinals will be bad for him too.
I think he can come through and be like 15 PPR points. Like, shouldn't he be 15 PPR points?
Believe it or not,
rolling
Garrett
out
Wilson
of bed
over Mike Evans rest of the season.
I think when you look at the schedules, it actually makes things a lot more interesting because you got the Vikings and then you got the Lions in 3 weeks for Wilson. I'm gonna take Evans, but it's interesting.
I think it's irresponsible to take Garrett Wilson over Mike Evans, but it's kind of fun to say Wilson over Evans.
But it's for sure Garrett Wilson this season in non-Zach Wilson games has been better per game than Mike Evans. Right?
That might be true now. I don't know if it was going into this week because he only had 1 good game with Joe Flacco.
I thought he scored.
He scored 2 touchdowns against the Browns, and that was it. He had
so
2
the first 3 games. He had 12 points, he had 30 points, and he had 9 points.
Right.
So it's not like he had a bad game either. 1 bad game.
Well, 9's bad. 12 ain't great.
12 ain't great.
12. But Mike Evans would take a 12 right about now.
Right now he would, but before this 3 games, cold streak, he was on fire. But
he was. It's true.
The thing about Brady in this game is he tried so hard to hit the deep ball and he couldn't hit the deep ball. He had 2 or 3 deep shots to Evans and they just couldn't connect.
Right.
And instead of going into the game, he was tied, and now he's behind him. He was tied going into the game with Chris Godwin in green zone targets. And that's incredible to think when you think about Evans in the role, so reliable when they get near the end zone. That is gone this year.
Is there anybody else that's happened to this year?
Right. Who are you talking about?
Adam Thielen.
Oh, okay.
It's the same thing.
It's true. All right, guys, let's move on. Let's move on here. Sorry. So much to get to. So many injuries. And it is Cyber Monday. So we've got a 30% discount for you. Receive 30% off your entire purchase from the CBS Sports store with the code CYBER at checkout. Promotion starts on November 28th, 2022 at 12 a.m. Eastern and ends on November 30th, 2022 at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. All orders must be from the CBS Sports store, pardon me. All orders must be from the CBS Sports store and added to the cart from the URL beginning with https://store.cbssports.com/. Promo code must be entered at checkout in order to be applied. Promo codes will not be added automatically. Promo codes cannot be applied retrospectively by you or our customer service team. Promo codes are not valid for online gift card purchases. Promo codes cannot be used with sale or charitable items. All right. We talked about Mike White. What do you think about Sam Darnold? Is he also a fantasy game changer for DJ Moore, for Deontay Foreman? This is a team that was last in the NFL in time of possession. They had the ball for over 37 minutes in this game against the Broncos. Heath, if Mike White is a potential game changer for his Jets, what about Sam Darnold for his Panthers?
That was my second to believe it or not, that DJ Moore is a must-hold through his bye now because Baker Mayfield won't be his quarterback. And I think everybody believes that. It's it's basically just the same thing for both guys. It's not about Sam Darnold. It's not about Mike White. It's about not Baker Mayfield and not Zach Wilson.
I think it's easy to call him a must hold, right? You got to hold him coming off this game, but what's your confidence level in him? If you think Garrett Wilson might be top 20, DJ Moore might be what?
I think I would put him behind Garrett Wilson for now.
Yes.
But I would guess the thing is when he comes back, there's going to be 6 teams on a bye, so he might be ranked in the top 20 in week 14. But for the fantasy playoffs, I think you're looking at a guy who is in the 25-ish range every week, probably just behind, I'll just rank Gabe Davis every week, and I rank him either 23rd if I like him, 24th if I'm not sure, or 25th if I don't like him. And DJ Moore will be 1 spot behind Gabe Davis.
Okay. So let's get to our news and notes, because this is big. This could be one of the most consequential weeks. I don't know if we have a lot of long-term injuries, but we have big-time names with injuries. Christian McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell both left with knee injuries. Mitchell first, and at the time of his injury, they both had 7 carries. Mitchell had 35 yards. McCaffrey had 17. Of course, McCaffrey had more catches. But they both left with knee injuries. More serious injury looks like it's Mitchell's. It was just knee irritation for McCaffrey. But Jordan Mason came in, had the last 4 carries of the game for the 49ers, and we will reassess as we get more information. Alvin Kamara left briefly. He came back in the game. He left on the play where he fumbled at the 1-yard line. Pretty big play.
Yeah, it actually looked terrible.
Which fumble?
Well, how
The
many
second
times?
one.
He fumbled
second
twice?
one in the game. Lost them both.
Ugh.
Disaster of a season.
Yeah. Oh, God. I know he's one of your losers. We'll get to him in a little bit.
He has.
Let's see. Josh Jacobs left briefly, and then he came back in. Travis
I'd say
Etienne.
so.
Yeah. So we really want Etienne to be healthy for next week at Detroit. He says he's going to be fine for next week, but he had, I think, 2 carries in the game. And
He left in the first quarter, had a foot issue, didn't come back in.
But he came back. It was strange because he has a foot issue. He came back to the sideline relatively early in the first half, I think, and was standing on the sideline with the rest of the players who were participating in the game. It's not like, so I don't know how serious it is.
well, they knew they were going to win that game. They had it the whole time.
Right.
They didn't need to bring.
I don't.
They wanted the front
I'm
row
not even 100% sure they should have won that game.
No, I agree. But
I think
they
it was a
did.
catch. You don't think so?
I really do. If there was no original call and you just had to make the decision, did he get his foot inbounds? I think the question is no.
You're talking about on the touchdown. Marvin Jones scored. Yeah, apparently one ankle equals 2 feet.
Yeah, he didn't need to get the second foot in. He got the first foot in.
He had to get the shin in. I don't think it's the ankle or the shin.
I think it's got to be like I heard it on the broadcast and I was surprised, but it's like ankle or above counts as
He's amazing.
a part of your body that counts if you get it in bounds. Because I originally saw it too, and I thought the same thing. I looked at it and I said, he only got 1 foot down. His knee landed out of bounds. This is going to get called back. Didn't get called back. James Lofton knew it right away. He immediately called it a touchdown on the broadcast.
Yeah, well, but that wasn't their last shot. It's not like they definitely would have lost if that had been incomplete, right? That wasn't 4th down. Whatever.
Right. They would have had another chance to do it. Going for 2 was, I guess that's what you do when you're 3-7.
That's what you do if you're 5-5, apparently.
Yeah, right. That too.
Michael Carter left with an ankle injury. And Dave, what's your take on the Jets running backs? Because this one doesn't feel like he's going to be back next week. I can't say that with certainty, but should be bracing ourselves for a Carter absence.
I would think so. James Robinson, it sounds like he was a coach's decision, and that's why he didn't play, and that they wanted to give Zonovan Knight a shot. Zonovan is his first name. Bam is what he's also known as. And he looked okay. Again, playing the Bears, so don't want to overreact too much. But I think you will see a multitude of Jets running backs next week if there is no Michael Carter. And you might see it even if there is Michael Carter. They did a nice job mixing guys in and just gashing Chicago, especially in the second half.
Okay, Jeff Wilson left, but he returned. Deontay Foreman left, but he returned. They're going into their bye.
Foreman left twice and returned twice.
Oh, nice bye week for him. But a big role for Chuba Hubbard in this game. Tyreek Hill left with cramps. Cannot wait for the Dolphins-Niners game next week. I should get the music queued up now. Traylon Burks scored a touchdown, recovering Derrick Henry's fumble in the end zone. Allen Robinson is out for the season. Darnell Mooney left in the third quarter with an ankle injury. Deebo Samuel was a little hobbled, and he got back up. He came into the game banged up. Let's see. Sam Darnold's going to keep starting. Kyle Allen is probably going to start next week for Houston. Let's see. What else? Oh, Eddie Jackson, already mentioned. Eddie Jackson, Chicago safety. He left in the second quarter with a foot injury.
Mm-hmm.
Miami left tackle Teron Armstead left in the second quarter. Huge loss for them. It's a pec injury. Could miss a few weeks. Lamar Jackson had a good game. 25 fantasy points right there, right about there. He had 3 or 4 almost touchdowns in this game. He could have had a huge game, but it was not to be. Tristan Wirfs, right tackle for the Bucs. He was carted off in overtime. X-rays on his ankle were negative. They don't need any more offensive line injuries. Neither do the Chargers. My goodness. Corey Linsley left with a concussion. They're starting center, and their is their left tackle or their right tackle?
Right tackle.
There, I did it again. He limped off in the second quarter. I'm not sure if he came back.
I believe he did.
Chicago right tackle Riley Reif left with an injury. Saints safety P.J. Williams left with a knee injury. And Carolina safety Xavier Woods, a guy who plays every snap for them, basically, he left with a knee injury. They have their bye week. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Week 12, the week when the quarterbacks threw passes to receivers that nobody cared about and did nothing for our fantasy teams, plus more winners and losers right after this. It rolls off the tongue. A lot of players who did well that we didn't care about. So this was, again, Week 12, the week when the quarterback threw passes to receivers that nobody cared about and did nothing for our fantasy teams. Zay Jones was started in 6% of leagues. He had 11 catches for 145 yards against the Ravens on 14 targets. Isaiah McKenzie and Nelson Aguilar back on Thursday. They led their teams in receiving. I think McKenzie led his team in receiving.
He did.
Yeah. DeAndre Carter. Very big surprise with Keenan Allen playing. Carter had 10 targets, 7 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown. Juwan Jennings had a great game. Olamide Zaccheaus, 91 yards for the Falcons. He's 4% rostered. Josh Oliver was the tight end who went off for the Ravens. Jordan Akins had a big day for the Texans. Heath, do any of these players matter because they are widely available?
So, Dave, we already talked about Garrett Wilson. Who were your other winners?
Just a little waiver wire peek here. These guys might matter.
Zay Jones might matter. There's literally no one else on that list that I want to pick up.
Okay.
Jones is at the top of the list. He's had I want to say it's like 6 or 7 games this year with at least 8 targets. And now it's back-to-back games with double-digit targets. One before the bye, one after the bye. And he's just a good short area option for Jacksonville that is probably going to continue to see a lot of short area targets because that's just how, Jacksonville's going to have to throw a lot. And especially if there's no run game for them to feel good about or to lean on or to have that presence in their offense. Jones should be a nice PPR piece to add. Good flex option.
Sorry, Heath. I had a little trouble coming up with the theme of this week. It wasn't so obvious this week to me. And one of the things that stood out was I think a lot of the best performers were not really started in a lot of leagues.
I thought the theme of this week was that we were going to do this in an hour and 5 minutes and not talk about Isaiah McKenzie and Juwan Jennings and DeAndre Carter. No, DeAndre Carter's important. Olamide Zaccheaus has been remarkable this season in terms of efficiency. Before Kyle Pitts got hurt, one of my favorite gags all season long was to talk about how Zaccheaus on about half as many targets was grossly outperforming Kyle Pitts. He's been awesome whenever they threw him the ball. I kind of don't think that would happen if they threw him the ball regularly, but he did a nice job against a bad secondary here.
Okay. All right. See, there you go. Thank you for humoring me. Time for winners. Dave, we already talked about Garrett Wilson. Who are your other winners? Oh, we talked about Zay Jones. He's one of your winners too. So
I'm down to one winner.
Rashad
White for Tampa Bay. 14 carries, 64 yards, 9 catches, 45 yards. As long as Leonard Fournette stays away, Rashad White is a must-start number 2 fantasy running back in PPR, and he's pretty close to that exact same thing in non-PPR as well. I thought he looked pretty good, all things considered. First half more so than the second half, and I still feel like Tampa Bay either wants to or kind of needs to get a run game going so that they're not leaning too much on Tom Brady.
So what happens when Fournette comes back? Because it's easy to start Rashad White when Fournette's not there, but when Fournette comes back, what is Rashad White?
I think he'll be in the mix and as a flex and maybe a low end number 2 running back. Because I think until Fournette can prove it again, I think Rachaad White's the better running back in Tampa Bay.
The key here that I would say, and the good thing for him is they trusted him in the passing game, and he delivered for the most part. I mean, the efficiency was still terrible on a per catch basis, but he caught 9 passes. He was efficient as a rusher. He's been so much better since Fournette got hurt than he was when Fournette was healthy. And so he's not giving them a reason to go back to Lenny.
I mean, I think I do need to point out that in the second half, he had 7 carries and he only had 11 yards. So I mentioned that first half, he got going, in the second half, slowed down a little bit. But I think that he's going to look, they could have had Giovanni Bernard back in action. They didn't use him. Keyshawn Vaughn barely played. I think they want White to be the guy.
Well, as we go into Sunday night, Rachaad White is currently in full PPR. In non-decimal scoring, he's tied with 3 other running backs as RB5. So he's anywhere from RB5 to RB8 right now going into Sunday Night Football with those 9 catches. That's a big deal for him. Tied with Jermichael Hasty, who had a touchdown catch, and Nick Chubb and Ramondre Stevenson. So great game for him. Started in 65% of leagues. Heath, let's go to your winners. You had Elijah Moore. You also have DK Metcalf and Brian Robinson. Robinson was only started in 23% of leagues. Metcalf, on the other hand, was started in 88% of leagues and had arguably he had one of his best games for sure. So what do you have to say about Metcalf and Robinson?
Yeah, pretty sure it was his second best game of the season. The second time this year he's got to 20 fantasy points. He finished with exactly 20 fantasy points, right?
Yes.
11 for 90 on 15 targets. The second time this year a player has had 15 targets and not reached 100 yards or scored a touchdown. Can you tell me who the other one was?
Deontay Johnson.
No, it was not. It was Mike Evans. But no, I thought their obvious intention of getting him more involved, trying to get him going after what's been a pretty dry stretch, is a good sign for the rest of the season. Now, I still think they should throw it to Tyler Lockett more. But it's a very positive sign for him that they were this intent on getting him involved in the offense.
9 targets in 3 of the past 4 games for DK Metcalf. That's a plus. We haven't seen Lockett get 9 targets since week 3. The one thing that's keeping Lockett afloat is that he's scoring every single week. 4 straight games with a touchdown for him, 3 of them from 20-plus yards out.
I mean, we could dissect it all we want, but these guys get started by almost everyone every week. You know, not to say that you shouldn't have brought it up, but it was nice to see more than, 40 yards from Metcalf. But fantasy managers have basically just said, I'm starting Metcalf and Lockett every week. And if, for the most part, they've been rewarded for it. That's
a much easier decision to make against the Raiders than it is other teams as well.
It's true.
Like against at the Rams next week, you're probably still starting them, but
yes,
it's a tougher situation.
All right, well, let's go back to Garrett Wilson. Who would you rather have rest of season, Garrett Wilson or a Seahawks receiver?
You're promising me no more Zach Wilson, correct?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I think I'd go Garrett Wilson first.
Dave?
In full PPR, you make the case because you figure that he'll catch the most passes from game to game and he can do the most with it yardage-wise. If trading were still happening, I'm positive that Lockett would still go for more than Garrett Wilson. I'd probably say this still sound crazy and this could change in a week. Lockett, Wilson, Metcalf, but all very close together.
Brian Robinson, 90% rostered, but only 23% started. I mean, you just don't expect him to catch a touchdown. 18 carries, 105 yards, 2 catches, 20 yards, and a touchdown against the Falcons. Great day for him. Do you buy it? Do you believe in Brian Robinson going forward?
The reason he's a winner is because it was just 7 days ago, almost to the minute, when we were discussing about how Antonio Gibson just had his first game since Robinson became active with more carries than Robinson. And we all thought, based on their efficiency this season, that was likely to be the case moving forward, that Antonio Gibson would get more carries than Brian Robinson. In this game, Robinson had 18 to Gibson's 9. And was far more efficient, looked better as a runner. I don't know that I necessarily buy it, but I feel better about him as a high-end flex next week than I did coming into this week.
Next week is at the Giants, then a bye, and then the Giants again. We've seen time and time again, the Giants can't stop the run.
Did Gibson get hurt and come back? because he only played 39% of the snaps, and that's low for him.
I wasn't aware of it, but it's certainly possible. Let's go to our losers. Heath, your losers are Alvin Kamara, Gerald Everett, and Donovan Peoples-Jones. This is a fun list here. Kamara has now gone, four straight games with pretty disappointing performances here, and this one was really bad with the 2 fumbles. So what do you think about Kamara at Tampa Bay and then a bye in his next 2 games?
I'd be pretty happy if I had 2 other running backs I could start, honestly. He's a low-end number 2 running back. I had him ranked 19th this week in a difficult matchup against the 49ers. That's in full PPR. And half PPR, he was barely inside the top 24. And non-PPR, he was barely inside the top 24. I think he probably catches enough passes, but the efficiency's been awful for 6 weeks now. And he's got 1 game all season where he's got into the end zone. This team is not going to get in the end zone that much. And the Tampa Bay run defense looks pretty fantastic.
Right.
If you're not Nick Chubb. And he's not Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
What I hate, what I really hate, is thinking that there's somebody out there whose dynasty season where they were contending is starting to crumble, and they're looking at Alvin Kamara on their dynasty roster, and I don't know. I mean, you couldn't get a first-round pick for him right now. I don't know that there's any reason to expect that he has another top 12 season left.
Well, what about the fact that before this 4-game stretch, he had 3 straight games with 105 or more total yards, 6 to 7 catches in each game, 17 and a half or more PPR fantasy points in each game. You know, he's only a month removed from being looking like an absolute stud, Alvin Kamara of old. You know, what do you make of that? I remember Josh Jacobs had a 2-game slippage. This is a 4-game slippage, so it's worse. But what do you think?
Right. I mean, it's a 4-game slippage, and it's not like before this he was Josh Jacobs.
Sure.
He was piecemealing his way to really good low-end RB1 production. I don't want to say that he wasn't, but I just like there's some reason to have hope, I guess, in week 15 that he starts looking like Alvin Kamara, but I'm not going to be excited to play him against Tampa Bay next week, and then he has a bye.
No. Right. But it's trade deadlines have passed. You're probably just going to have to hang on to Kamara. You lower expectations for week 13. You find a running back to replace him in week 14. He's got the Falcons and then the Browns in weeks 15 and 16. Hopefully the guy you drafted comes back to being that guy for fantasy playoffs.
Kudos to you if you found some way to where you're going to be in the playoffs at that point anyway.
Well, yeah, you
can do that.
Certainly
there are people that have
the one team I have Kamara, I went into the week 7 and 4, so I have no idea how I'm doing, but probably not that well. That's I think a mix-in Kamara team, but Gerald Everett is another loser of yours, and he was started. I mean, like, come on. When are we ever going to be able to trust Gerald Everett at this point?
No,
is it done? Drop him?
Well, except it's the Raiders next week. So it's
not better than the Cardinals.
It's exactly what we said about Foster Moreau at this time last week but he gets Seattle next week, and then he scored the late touchdown to save his day. Everett's he's probably going to score another 2 touchdowns this season. And so those weeks he'll be serviceable, but the targets just basically disappeared. I don't know how many points he ended up with. I know he got the 2-point conversion, so that gave you a little something.
That gave you 7.8 PPR fantasy.
He might have been a top 12 tight end this week.
Donovan Peoples-Jones was started in 31% of leagues, rostered in 76% of leagues, had his first bad game in a while. What do you, is he going to be better or worse with Deshaun Watson next week?
I think he'll be better, but this was something that kind of hit me in the middle of this week. And I didn't really talk about it, but how many times have we seen Amari Cooper, David Njoku, and Donovan Peoples-Jones all involved?
All involved.
Like we've seen.
We're talking 6 targets each.
Peoples-Jones has had a really nice stretch when Njoku's not done much the last month. And there were a couple weeks before that where I think maybe they were both okay. But like weeks 8 through 11, Njoku was nothing. And that's pretty close to Peoples-Jones' best stretch of the season.
Yeah, there's been one game this year where all 3 have had at least 6 targets. Pretty rare.
And so I'm a little concerned that Cooper's the 1, Njoku's the 2 when they're both good, and Peoples-Jones the 3.
Except in a road game. Then Cooper's the 3.
Well, that's a good point.
No, it's a good point. I felt like there was a clunker coming from Donovan Peoples-Jones. Just
I mean, we almost had it last week.
Yeah.
We got lucky at the end of last week. I originally had Peoples-Jones on my loser list too. I took him off just because A, Deshaun Watson's coming back next week. B, they play Houston next week. And there's going to be he's going to be a really good bye week replacement wide receiver.
Man, are we happy that they play Houston next week for the passing game?
I don't think we should be elated, but I think I think Peoples-Jones can get you back to 10 to 12 people.
I just think of the Cleveland Browns offense, their offensive philosophy, and the fact that they have maybe the most talented running back in football on their team, and what the Texans have allowed this year to running games versus passing games.
You'll be nuts not to rank Nick Chubb in your top one.
It's so funny when we previewed the Dolphins-Browns game. I was saying, Dolphins-Texans game. I was saying, we love Tua, but this team, they don't give up a lot of points to quarterbacks. They never do, or receivers really. And by no accomplishment of their own, they gave up only 19 fantasy points to Tua Tagovailoa and pretty modest games to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. The Texans
and Jeff Wilson.
I was really concerned that Tua was hurt.
He took some hits.
Yeah,
because when they pulled him because the game wasn't close, and then Houston got it back to within 2 scores with like 6 minutes to go, and they didn't put him back in.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, he may have been a little beat up. All right, Dave's losers are Mike Evans, we talked about, and then we got Tyler Boyd and Cordarrelle Patterson. Can we drop Tyler Boyd, and what do we do with Patterson? I'm not going to drop him, but talk to me about Boyd and Patterson.
You can drop Boyd. It sounds like Jamar Chase is going to be back next week. When are you going to feel confident to use Tyler Boyd? When it's 2 straight games now where there's been a huge opportunity for him to put up huge numbers. Actually, it's more than 2. It's
4 straight games.
How long was he out? Because he went in to be checked for a concussion.
He did take a hit. He did come back in soon after. I don't think he missed much time.
I just saw him going to the blue tent.
In the 4 games he played without Jamar Chase, he maxed out at 12 PPR points.
Yeah.
He was under 10 PPR points in the other 3 games.
So disappointing. I'd drop him. I mean,
you can. I think he's droppable. It wouldn't surprise me if he had another 100-yard game somewhere along the way. He had 100 yards against the Jets. He had 100 yards, 150 yards against Atlanta. He scored in those games. It wouldn't surprise me if he had another one of those games before the season ended, where Cincinnati's just got a laugher of a matchup and Joe Burrow goes berserk. Maybe that's what happens 2 games from now for them against Cleveland. But
you know where he's going to be when that happens, Dave?
Where's he going to be?
On your bench. No one's starting him.
Right.
But what about Patterson? He was only started in 36% of leagues and fairly close to a touchdown. But what do you think?
He was, and he played the most of any Atlanta running back. He played 58% of the snaps, all 5 of their snaps inside the 10. But he's not going to be that featured guy for them. He's going to be sharing game after game, and I can't call him a must-start number 2 running back moving forward. I think he's going to be on the fence of a low-end number 2, high-end number 3, flex range type of player.
Would you rather have Kamara or Patterson?
Kamara.
Yeah. All right, almost touchdowns. Taylor Heineke missed Terry McLaurin open in the end zone. Demarcus Robinson dropped a touchdown, was not the easiest catch. Josh Oliver nearly had a touchdown. Lamar Jackson was stopped short at the goal line, and then Mark Andrews dropped a touchdown on the next play, and then Gus Edwards scored a rushing touchdown. So, like I said, Lamar Jackson was the biggest victim of almost touchdowns this week. Greg Dulcich had one called back. He was out of the end zone. He went out of the end zone, came back in, and then he caught it. Jermichael Hasty nearly had a second touchdown catch, but he got stopped at the 1-yard line. And then on the next play, he got stuffed at the goal line. And then on the next play, Jamal Agnew caught a touchdown from Trevor Lawrence. So those are some almost touchdowns for you. We will get to the games after this quick break on Fantasy Football Today. We are back to talk Chargers and Cardinals. We'll start with the late games because they were really, really fun. Chargers 25, Arizona 24. They win on a 2-point conversion. Herbert and Murray have huge games. And what's our believe it or not, Heath Cummings?
Believe it or not, Kyler Murray is a top 5 fantasy quarterback rest of season.
He's going to be close to it. He's going to be close to being there. If you amend it to top 7, I think I would buy into that. I like the receivers that he has. I like that he's running a little bit, or at least that he ran in this game. It's a sign that his legs are healthy.
Well, maybe, because I would take him over Lamar Jackson at this point.
I'd take him over Justin Fields.
All right, so it's not going to be Mahomes. Not going to take him over Josh Allen. Not going to take him over Jalen Hurts. That's 3. I think I'd rather have Justin Herbert. What about you guys?
I think I'd probably take Kyler.
I like Herbert's schedule a lot better than I like Kyler's schedule.
Tua. I'd take Tua. That puts him 6th.
Is Mike Williams? How many games is Mike Williams playing?
4 more.
Yeah. Then I'd probably take Herbert, but I don't feel like that's 4 more fantasy games.
What does that
That's
mean?
not counting week 17.
18.
Sure.
18.
Also from this game, okay, believe it or not, James Conner is actually an RB1 rest of season.
This is turn back the clock. Yeah, I believe that.
I do too.
We knew this was going to be a good week for him. I mean, this was the Chargers, you know?
We knew he was going to be a borderline RB1 3 weeks ago.
I don't know if I did. I don't know if I bought into that.
Definitely got to take him ahead of Kamara.
Yes.
How about Damian Pierce or James Conner?
James Conner. Over 3 Damian Pierces.
How about Ken Walker or James Conner rest of season?
I think I'd still rather have Walker, despite the disappointing game.
Today was a hidden stinker.
Yes.
For Ken Walker.
It sure was.
Dave might have another name for that.
I'm going to be a good boy for the rest of the show.
That was one of your best jokes. That was terrific. All right. What do you think about Marquise Brown? What do you think about DeAndre Hopkins with only 6 targets on a day that Marquise Brown came back? Is that just a coincidence? How many passes did Kyler throw in this game? He threw only 29. I don't know. Anything on the passing games here? This was an interesting game. Palmer wasn't very good. Keenan Allen wasn't very good, but he caught a touchdown. You had Carter going off. Dave, what jumped out at you when you look at the pass catchers?
I thought that Keenan Allen looked pretty good. I wish that he had seen more targets. Of course, I could say that with any wide receiver, but the fact that Carter had 10, Keenan Allen had 7, same as Josh Palmer. Like I was expecting a little bit more for Keenan Allen. So the touchdown kind of saved us, but I think that he could end up being back into that 7-8 catch range pretty quickly here. So I'm encouraged by what I saw with Keenan Allen. Mildly discouraged with Josh Palmer, didn't have the same type of opportunity that we've seen him have in the past couple of weeks. A little crazy how much the Chargers threw the ball in the game too, 47 pass attempts. But
that's them.
That is them. They are the pass heaviest team in the league.
The crazier part was the Cardinals threw 29.
I agree. Well, Connor was rolling, so they didn't want to get away from him.
A bad run. What a bad run defense. All right, anything else on this game?
No.
All right. Raiders 40, Seahawks 34.
I want to say something crazy about Josh Jacobs, but no, why not? I don't have anything else good for this game. Believe it or not, Josh Jacobs is and will be the number 1 running back in fantasy football.
In PPR?
No. Take your pick. Dealer's choice.
Eckler's going to beat him.
And I think people would still rather have Derrick Henry. I think people would still rather have Nick Chubb.
I want to know who Dave would rather have.
I wouldn't rather have.
I'm telling you who I would rather have. Not just people, but I'm one of those people. Look, I'm not taking anything away from Jacobs. He's playing great football. He's trying to prove that he can be a lead back in this league. But he's not going berserk like this every single week. He
has now scored, let me see, 19 or more PPR fantasy points in 6 of his last 8 games. I mean, that is crazy. Derrick Henry is definitely in that conversation. I mean, he's been, I don't think in PPR I can put Chubb there, but like Eckler to me is the clear RB1. I can't say that about McCaffrey right now because he has this knee injury.
Right.
And I couldn't, if Mitchell were healthy, I couldn't say that about McCaffrey either, but Mitchell's not healthy.
Is it easy to say Jacobs over Saquon?
Oh my God.
Yes.
I think it is too. I think it is too. Do you want to reserve comment on Jacobs over Jonathan Taylor until after Monday night? Or have you seen enough?
No, I'll take Jacobs
over. I'll take Jacobs, but I think it's I'm encouraged by
It's
Taylor.
close. It
I'll
could be close.
Jacobs.
Yeah.
The only one for me, Heath, is Eckler. I guess Eckler, Henry, Jacobs for me.
I think those three, I think it's perfectly fine with those three in the top tier. I do wonder if the Chargers ever have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, if we see Eckler's targets dry up a little bit. Like, it's abnormal how much they've been throwing. It's been necessity, I would hope. I would hope they would like to throw the ball down the field occasionally.
Just update here. It's feared apparently that Darnell Mooney might be out for the season with an ankle injury. That's a tough break.
Yeah, he couldn't put weight on his leg after he got hurt.
Tom Pelissero. Okay, so there's one other scenario here. If Mitchell is out for an extended period of time and McCaffrey is not, then McCaffrey could easily be right up there with these guys. Oh, and you know what? Ramondre Stevenson could if Damian Harris is out for a while too.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Also from this game, let's talk about Derek Carr. I will just tell you, I started Derek Carr. I sat Derek Carr for Tom Brady in one league. I sat Derek Carr for Jimmy Garoppolo in one league. I think those days are done. I think I'm just buying into Derek Carr. It's 4 straight good games now. Is anybody else buying into Derek Carr?
I think it's fair to.
Yeah.
But you got to be worried about the fooled you game, because he's done this so many times to us before, where he looks good for a spell, and then all of a sudden he lays out one of the stinkers that Heath wants me to talk about with another player in the league.
But everyone can, right? I mean,
everyone can. I wonder if it happens, maybe not next week against the Chargers, but maybe that game against the Rams. I don't
have to start him in a tough matchup, but if it's the same matchup, I like him better than Brady. I like him better than Garoppolo.
The thing that I struggle with when we get to these guys in this range and the matchup dependent is the matchups change so regularly, as far as especially this year, as far as who is a difficult matchup and who is not a difficult matchup. And so I think Derek Carr is right back in, like I said last week, the triangle of consideration. But I'm not ready to say that he's definitively better than Jimmy Garoppolo because of this week, because for the season, Jimmy Garoppolo has still been better. And Jimmy Garoppolo has still probably been better for the last month, although it's really, really close.
Well, last week
Garoppolo was coming off of a stretch of 5 of 6 games with 21, 22 fantasy points. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So like 1 week like this is not enough for me to say now Carr's definitely ahead of him, but they are right in the same cocoon of consideration. That's so much better than the triangle. The cocoon of consideration.
Well, one of them hopefully will come out as a beautiful butterfly.
I don't have much hope for that. I think they are who they are, but
yeah, maybe. All right. They are who they are, but they both have better weapons than they've had in the past, because even though Carr's weapons are injured, Devontae Adams is just on another planet.
And Josh Jacobs made 2 catches today that were really great catches for a running back.
All right. Anything else from this?
That guy's made some money this season.
Seattle, Geno Smith, another good game.
Maybe.
You think the Raiders wish they could go back and take that 5th-year option?
Yeah, they probably wish they had done that, but I don't know if that means they're going to make him one of the top 10 highest paid running backs in football.
I don't think I get too excited about Mac Hollins. He scored on a flea flicker.
Yep.
Those points don't count.
Yeah, they shouldn't count. I mean, I would any trick play I would remove from the scoring. All right, next up, Kansas City 26. I'm kidding, everybody. Just shave your hate mail. Kansas City 26, Rams 10. Heath.
Believe it or not, Sky Moore has a role in the offense no matter who plays.
I don't know how that's going to help people in fantasy football.
Well,
He'll
because
have
most
a role.
weeks, yeah. Go ahead.
But yeah, he's not going to get a ton of PPR points. He had 8.6 today. Do I have that right?
If he's getting 6 targets per game, there are going to be stretches where he scores double-digit fantasy points in multiple games in a row.
I'm just not believing that Juju Smith-Schuster is going to see 3 targets a game from now on.
Hey Dave.
Yeah.
Can you look up Juju's snaps? Because I didn't see him on the field at some key times.
He definitely did not play the normal allotment of snaps.
Yeah, I don't know what that was all about. It's like he was coming back from an ankle or something. So that was pretty interesting.
I got it.
What do you got?
28 snaps.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's not a lot. 32 for Sky Moore, 41 for MVS, 60 for Justin Watson.
That is not typical of
72 for Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, don't do that, AJ Dillon. Are you kidding? That is not. This is what I'm talking about. This is the week where all the people who score are the people that we don't want to score. Like, get out of here with your A.J. Dillon touchdown. All right.
It was a nice 20-yard run.
But how do we get that and not the get out of here with your Kenneth Gainwell touchdown to start the game?
Is that who it was?
Seriously.
I thought it was.
Gainwell scored the first touchdown of the
That's
game.
what I'm talking about. This is the week where everybody's scoring touchdowns that nobody wants to score. This. Speaking of which, Isaiah Pacheco did score 22 carries, 69 yards, and a touchdown. That was nice. No carries for McKinnon. Ronald Jones had 4. How are we feeling about Pacheco, Heath?
Ronald Jones had 4. I hope we don't look back on this 2 years from now and say, remember that game where they gave Isaiah Pacheco like 17 carries inside the 10-yard line and he only scored 1 touchdown and they never going to give him the ball inside the 10-yard line again? Because he got stuffed, which the Chiefs offense did inside the red zone mostly. It was a lackluster performance for the entire offense. But you have to feel pretty good about him as the lead back on one of the best offenses in football. It's just that offense doesn't score a lot of traditional rushing touchdowns very often.
Kyron Williams over Cam Akers rest of season?
I think so. But both of them can be, like in a 10-team league, what are you doing with these guys?
Did I have the numbers
Waiver
wrong?
City.
Oh, I put the wrong. I was looking at my notes and I have the numbers wrong. I put 1 carry for Kyron Williams. He had 11.
No, 11.
And 3 catches. He's 54% rostered. He could be a waiver wire ad. Let's move on to the next game.
Or not.
San Francisco.
Played 72% of the snaps, too. Sorry, Adam.
Wow. Oh, that's good to know. Thank you. San Francisco 13 and the Saints 0.
So I don't like with all the injuries and stuff, it's difficult to have something from this game. Believe it or not, the Taysom Hill role is wholly and entirely unpredictable.
Yeah, I believe it.
What? Wasn't that the believe it or not after week 1?
Well, I was excited. I thought they were going to get him a little bit more involved. Excited for Taysom Hill.
This wasn't the first time. Like we've had multiple times where we thought either Taysom Hill is a big part of the offense or Taysom Hill is no longer a big part of the offense, and it's been followed by the opposite of what we thought.
Here's the truth. He's a frustrating part of the offense. It's annoying already, and it's enough already, and he's not been that great. And you couldn't have expected a good game from him against the 49ers. That's a good run defense. He threw 1 pass. He had 2 targets and 1 catch. He's taking work away from everybody. He's getting people out of rhythm. It's annoying already.
Did you see the pass he threw?
No.
It was a very consequential play. It was almost about a 40 to 50-yard catch by Olave. It was ruled a catch originally, and then it was overturned. He didn't hang on to it. Could have given Olave a much better game. Instead, he has 5 catches for 62 yards on 9 targets. And my biggest beef with the Saints and why I'm not in love with Chris Olave, and I get criticized every week, I think, is they just don't throw enough. I mean, you almost never get more than 30 pass attempts from Andy Dalton. His last 5 games, 30, 29, 27, 25, 29. It's just weird. You know, it's not like they're so good and they're running the ball so well. So that's my beef with Olave. I think it's hurting Kamara too. But you have a bad offense throwing 30 times a game, guys. Like, I don't really know what to do with that. Not much.
You lower expectations is what you do.
Any thoughts on Ayuk versus Debo? Another win for Ayuk.
Debo got hurt in this game.
He did. He came back.
Came in, got hurt, came back.
He did.
They're both borderline number 2 wide receivers, and good luck figuring out when to start which one.
At least Ayuk had 8 targets. At least Debo had 7 targets. Debo had a couple of carries. It's how fancy is Kittle only had 4 targets.
I don't know, man. I don't know how I'm going to sort them and Gabe Davis and DJ Moore on a weekly basis. I need Adam's randomizer.
The wheel? Yeah. You know, that's when I just try to go with the best offenses. So DJ Moore is probably going to be last most weeks in that group. I'm pretty down on Debo. I don't know, man. If we got to check on the McCaffrey and Mitchell injuries, that's actually a pretty big deal for Debo.
Oh yeah,
Mitchell's going to miss time, so I guess I shouldn't be down.
And
on
we got to see how healthy he is next week. Like if it's a limited participation all week again thing, it's kind of tough to trust Debo.
Yeah. Okay. On the other side of the ball, Juwan Johnson was a big dud.
Had a touchdown.
He had it hit 2 almost
right in his face.
And his literally
Just
right on his face.
didn't stick. I think he was interfered with, but that wouldn't have got him any fantasy points either.
And we'll keep an eye on Jordan Mason as a Tuesday waiver wire ad potentially.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know there's going to be a more frustrating player than George Kittle. So you just have to deal with it. Sorry.
It's the whole offense.
Yeah. Washington.
Even
19.
McCaffrey's been sucked into this.
True.
Because he's been sharing so much, not being used exactly the same way as he was in Carolina.
All right, let's go to the early games now. Washington 19, Atlanta 13.
Believe it or not, Terry McLaurin fooled you.
For like the season?
Well, no, there was the Taylor Heineke stretch when it's like, oh, Terry McLaurin's fixed. Terry McLaurin's back to being a high-end number 2 wide receiver. In the last couple of weeks, he's not been that guy at all.
They were able to run the ball again. And so I think anytime there's a matchup like that, it's going to hurt McLaurin getting a lot of targets because Heineke's not throwing the ball as much.
And their next 2 games are against the Giants?
Yeah. Yeah, I look, they've turned into a different team. They've turned into a really good defense that doesn't throw the ball. Look at Taylor Heineke's passing yards in his last 4 games. It's like Dalton. 149, 211, 191, 138. Are you kidding me? And someone is pointing out in the chat there was bad weather in this game. That's
yes,
point.
yes.
There's no question that McLaurin is going to be his number 1 target. It's just a matter of how many passes is he going to throw. He hardly ever reaches 30, just like Dalton. And he, like I said, he did have him open in the end zone and he missed them. So McLaurin or Garrett Wilson rest of season?
This one feels easier for me, Garrett Wilson.
Wilson.
Okay. Gibson or Brian Robinson rest of season?
What's
this was Robinson's first good game. Like he was efficient, ran hard, ran well. I know he scored touchdowns before. If Gibson's healthy and he comes out, if it comes out that he's just fine, I'll still say Gibson.
Here's my problem is because what's their schedule after the Giants games? Because I think there's a real legitimate reason to think Brian Robinson will be better in both of the Giants games.
Giants,
sure.
Giants, Niners, Cleveland, Dallas. They have in their next 4 games, their last 4 games of the fantasy season, not including the bye, they have 3 amazing matchups.
Right. So Cleveland in the fantasy championships week 17.
I'm probably going to take Robinson in the Giants games and the Cleveland game, and Gibson in the other game.
Okay. That's more.
But if Gibson's okay, he's going to take some rushing work too. It won't all go on to Robinson's plate.
But was he not okay today?
He only played 39% of the snaps. I didn't pay as much attention to that game as other games. Someone told me earlier in the game that he was missing some time. I don't know if there's anything significant or not. I can look around and see.
All right. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Like, you know, what you're getting from the Falcons. We'll talk about Zacchaeus on Tuesday.
Look, one last thing. If it comes out that Gibson is actually fine, then maybe they just benched him.
Well, that's the thing. I guess that's the reason I was more like willing to believe it, is because I thought it was pretty clear when Robinson was first available, they were kind of done with Antonio Gibson. And then McKissick got hurt, and so Gibson was the pass-catching back. And then Gibson was better as a rusher for a while, and so the Gibson got more carries. But if Brian Robinson's good, I think they just want Gibson to be McKissick.
I don't want to talk about the Sunday night game, but I got to tell you, these coaches have got to stop going for it on 4th down in their own territory. You are not as smart as you think you are. Just punt the freaking football.
I think you're really wrong about that.
No, in your own territory,
especially when you're the Philadelphia Eagles and you have Jalen Hurts.
What's the point? Just punt the ball and play defense.
The point is continuing to have the ball and trying to score.
There's too much risk. There's not enough reward at your own wherever they were. They are at their own 37-yard line.
4th and
1 at their own 37-yard line.
I'm going for that every single time.
What?
Every single time.
You know what?
Okay.
You and your analytics.
I take it back. If I have a 7-point lead, no, every single time.
If they're playing the Chiefs, that's one thing. They're playing the Packers. They're heavy favorites. The Packers offense
even better. Good. The Packers might not even score.
That's just giving them the game. I just giving them a chance. I just play defense, man.
What percentage would you have to believe that you were likely to get it to go for it?
70%.
Okay, I think the Eagles are 70% in 3rd and 4th and 1.
It doesn't. What does it do for you if you go for it on 4th and 1? You're at the 38-yard line. Then it's just not enough.
You have
reward.
the ball and they don't.
Yeah, I understand, but punt the ball.
No.
And don't take the risk of giving them 1st and 10 at your own 37. Cincinnati 20, Tennessee 16. Like Mike McCarthy did that on Thanksgiving against the Giants. What was the point of that? You're so much better than the Giants. Why give them a lifeline? Cincinnati 20, Tennessee 16.
You're so much better. I'm sorry. Believe it or not. See that again. This is Hayden Hurst. This is Samaje Perine. Believe it or not, the Titans are not a bad matchup for pass catching running backs.
I guess. Yes, that is true. They do. That is one thing that they are giving up a lot of. But believe it or not, they're a bad matchup for everything else.
Well, this wasn't very good evidence of that because Samaje Perine also got a rushing touchdown.
Right, so you don't have to believe it.
Their pass defense is brutal, and teams are going to continue to throw on them as long as their quarterbacks are upright and not getting sacked a ton. Burrow was sacked once today.
Their pass defense is brutal?
The Titans' pass defense?
Yeah, they haven't been brutal. They've really turned the corner because they never blitz.
No.
And they get pressure most weeks.
Not this week.
And apparently not. And Higgins.
It's not like Burrow had a star-studded day, but
no, not at all.
Higgins made a bunch of, big time catches.
Bottom line is they don't really give up more than 20 points, hardly ever. They're just not a team where you're seeing a lot of fantasy points. I don't know. I mean, we don't usually.
Another good game for Treylon Burks.
Yes, let's talk about that. What do you think about Treylon Burks? He did have, I think, a 50-yard catch.
The most important thing we're going to say, and you might not be able to fix it for this year, and I understand if you're hurting right now if Treylon Burks was in your lineup. Please take this moment, mark it on your calendar for whenever your rules discussion is. Make sure this never happens to any other fantasy manager in your league. Every touchdown should count for fantasy football. If someone scores a touchdown, you should get fantasy points for that. I'm sorry if you didn't get fantasy points for Treylon Burks' touchdown. If you're a commissioner, just fix it. It should have been that way. Everybody thought it was that way. Fix it.
Yeah, you should fix that. But the question I have about Burks is he's getting so much of his production the last 2 weeks on big chunk plays, which is great. I mean, he's got that potential, obviously, but does that that's an interesting profile. So he's only 62% rostered. He's at Philadelphia next week, then the Jaguars, then the Chargers. It gets much better after that. How much of a must start is Treylon Burks if this is what he is, big play dependent?
He's not
a must start. He's an excellent boom bust number 3 wide receiver, though. Love having that guy in my wide receiver 3 slot. And
I don't want to rely on him for deep targets, but he was great. I talked about how Higgins had an awesome catch, the big man catch, and Burks had a perfect one. Just a big deep ball. Tannehill put it to his spot. He was there, grabbed it, didn't have to body catch it. It was impressive. He could end up being a very good receiver in this league. And very good for fantasy moving forward. And when I say moving forward, I mean more like next year, not this year.
Pick him up. All right, Jacksonville 28, Baltimore 27. Another game that was won on a 2-point conversion and then almost won again on a 68-yard field goal that fell just short. But Heath, what do you got for Jacksonville and Baltimore?
Believe it or not, in this one, just think about it for a minute. Trevor Lawrence will outscore Lamar Jackson rest of season.
No, didn't we already establish that Lawrence has the worst schedule going forward? That was what I
don't remember agreeing to that.
We talked about that on
Trevor Lawrence has outscored Lamar Jackson since week 5.
Lawrence's schedule is bad?
Wasn't that the case? What's his schedule?
Lions, Titans, Cowboys, Jets, Texans in week 17.
Yeah, that's a bad schedule after the Lions. I'm going to tell you, first of all, he's already had one bad game against the Texans. But I think every opponent after the Lions, his last 4 opponents, I bet they're all like top 6 against quarterbacks. He was the quarterback that stood out when I did the schedule analysis.
I know the schedule's tough for Baltimore too. I will still take Lamar Jackson over Trevor Lawrence.
Me too. Heath, how about you?
I think it's really close. I mean, I think Lamar will be better. I don't like Lamar's schedule very much. The Steelers twice, the Broncos next week, the Browns and the Falcons. So he's got 1 good, 1 maybe, and 3 bad, kind of like Lawrence. I really think this touchdown thing should change for him, but also it's not like they've put a great situation around him. He's throwing up YOLO balls to Deshaun Jackson, and trying to wait long enough in the pocket for Demarcus Robinson to lose his man in coverage.
Mm-hmm. He's missing throws too, which we talked about.
So I don't know. I'm discouraged, even though he scored 25 points and should have had 30.
Okay.
But he's had he's had a number of should have had 30s this year.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about Christian Kirk's disappointing game? 4 catches, 46 yards on 9 targets. Did have the 9 targets, but that was disappointing. Dave, what do you think about Christian Kirk?
Running right back to him next week, and he was checked out during the game, but I believe he stayed in. I'm starting him next week against Detroit. That's easy. I'll reevaluate after that, but I'll still call him a top 24 receiver rest of season. Does he pass by Garrett Wilson? Well, next week.
The reason why I circled Trevor Lawrence's schedule is he's got Detroit, which is great. On paper, Tennessee is still a great matchup, but we're finding out every week that's simply not the case. Dallas is not easy. The Jets are not easy. And the Texans going into this week gave up the 3rd fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks because everybody just runs on them all day.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll play it week by week. All right, Carolina 23 and Denver 10.
So we already did the believe it or not on DJ Moore, and I don't really want to talk about the Broncos.
Latavius? You want to talk about Latavius?
Yeah, I mean
he's worth talking about.
He had a 52-yard run, and I thought it looked like he hurt himself halfway through it, but I think he just got tired. Believe it or not, Latavius Murray is a high-end flex rest of season.
I can believe that.
Yeah. So let's compare Latavius Murray to, say, Brian Robinson. Who would you rather have?
I was really afraid you were going to say Deontay Foreman, and Dave and I had a heck of a battle that came out. I think Dave won that one by 0.3 or 0.4 of a fantasy point between Deontay Foreman and Latavius Murray today. It was a pillow fight for the ages. A slight lean to Latavius. Like, his usage in this game was spectacular.
Yeah, they'll play out the string with him at running back. I think. I don't think they're going to completely take him out of the game plan. 82% of the snaps, dominated 3rd and 4th downs, every single snap inside the 10. And there were a lot of plays where they just did. It looked like they did not want Russell Wilson to do anything. And they just wanted they wanted Murray to take the ball.
If he has this role the rest of the season, and that's not a sure thing, he has 2 terrible matchups at Baltimore and at the Rams, but his other 3 games are Chiefs, Cardinals, Chiefs. Those weeks, he could be better than a high-end flex.
Yeah.
But I think you've got to start him with that as the expectation. Especially against the Chiefs, for example, because those could be games where Kansas City can score 3 touchdowns in the first half. And I don't know if the Broncos are capable of scoring 3 touchdowns in 4 quarters.
No, but I do think he played almost all the 3rd and 4th downs, right? Or
all but one.
Yeah, so
all but one.
That's the thing that doesn't sound right about Latavius Murray.
Yeah,
but I don't think a bad game script is going to hurt him.
Well, unless Mike Boone comes back and takes that over, which could happen as soon as next week. This is a team that wants to use multiple running backs. I think this is the most that a running back has played for them this year. 82%. I don't think it's even close.
Let's go to our next game here. Miami 30, Houston 15. Let's talk about Dameon Pierce. We have to talk about him.
Believe it or not, Dameon Pierce, this is the same one as last week, has hit the rookie wall and is no longer a fantasy starter.
Yeah, it's believable, and I think the Texans are aware of it. He only played 55% of the snaps. Really looked awful. The Texans, their offense overall is just awful. And when they're starting Allen at quarterback, it's easy for a defense to say, okay, let's focus on this rookie and make sure he doesn't go anywhere. Even more frustrating that a short yardage goal line carry went to Agumbawale in the 3rd quarter instead of Pierce.
What a terrible stretch for Dameon Pierce. I don't know if he's hitting the rookie wall, but whatever it is, I mean, it's not good. But
it's going to be frustrating because he's got the Browns next week.
Yeah.
Good schedule.
Yeah.
Well, at least good opportunity next week against Cleveland.
I don't ever know what my ranking is going to look like the following week on Sunday night, and I'm usually pretty bad at guessing, but I do not anticipate Dameon Pierce being a top 20 running back for me.
No, I think
Even
that's
even against the Browns.
Yeah.
Okay. And on the other side of the ball, not a disappointing game for Wilson, but he still scored. Dolphins are the Dolphins. They're freaking great. Cleveland 23, Tampa Bay 17.
I love our analysis for the Dolphins.
I'm so excited for their game next week against the Niners. I mean, that is so cool.
Yeah, I'm a little worried, but
about Tua.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For that. Cleveland 23, Tampa Bay 17.
Yeah, we did Donovan Peoples-Jones. David Njoku is back as a big part of the Browns offense.
Yeah, I'll say that he's back as a part of the offense. Big part, that's not going to happen with Cooper there.
Well,
I think
I 7 to 8 targets a game. Let's just say he will get 7 to 8 targets a game.
You got lucky with the late touchdown catch. If he doesn't catch that touchdown, it's a dud, and we're talking about dropping David Njoku, certainly lowering expectations. As it stands, 7 targets are nice, 5 catches are nice. Throw downfield a little bit more. Can that be possible?
If he had scored the touchdown in the first quarter, would we have gotten lucky with the touchdown catch?
Yes, because the rest of the game he was pretty dudsville.
That's
the one play saved him in fantasy.
That wasn't him. He was routinely getting around 70 yards before the injury. He had 29 yards in this game.
This is another example of a player that suffers a high ankle sprain, and we come back to him when he gets in action again, and he's just not quite the same player.
But if he's getting 7 targets every week, he's going to be a must-start top 10 tight end.
Let's put it this way. If you're in a league where you don't have to start a tight end, you don't have to roster David Njoku.
But that's like 2% of our listeners.
It's more than 2%.
If he's getting 7 targets every week, he's going to be a must-start tight end.
Sure, I agree. But big part of the Browns' offense, I got problems with that word big.
He's pretty big, Dave. I mean, he's very tall.
The number 2 target in the Browns' pass offense.
That's interesting. It's going to be pretty close between him and Donovan Peoples-Jones. We're talking about David Njoku, and now we're talking about a new game, our last game here. Unless there's anything we really... No, you know what? I'm sorry. I know we're running longer than I wanted, but that's okay. Tom Brady. It wasn't a terrible game. It was 22 fantasy points, right? It's now 19 to 22 fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games, but I don't know, man. I just... Something's missing. And then it's funny because now they've got Godwin going, and Godwin's been great the last 2 weeks, and he still isn't great. So
he's super old.
He's super old, and he's not quite as precise as he was before. Consistently, because there were some throws that he made that were awesome. But he's got, back in the day, meaning like last year, he was on target all the time. He was on all the time. And this year, it feels like there's maybe 5 throws a game where you just go, that's Brady?
We've given up hope of Tom Brady just crushing it to end the season, right?
I have.
Yeah. Okay. And then we'll now go to our last game, which is the Jets and the Bears, which we've probably covered mostly. I'd say we covered the Jets. What about the Bears and David Montgomery? 17 touches, ended up with a decent game. Thoughts on Montgomery?
Well, I don't remember what we said a couple of weeks ago, but I think he's just doing what we expected. Yeah.
Go ahead.
He's a good number 2 running back and probably a number 1 against the right matchup.
I don't know if he'll ever be a number 1, but here's another running back that's got 20 touch potential from week to week, played almost 70% of the snaps, a lot of 3rd and 4th downs, every single snap inside the 10. And he had over 100 total yards. I don't think there's anything to complain about with Montgomery.
I mean, here's a question. Here's a good one.
He was number 1 last week, wasn't he? He scored 21 fantasy points.
He was last week, yes.
But he'll never be again.
Might never be again. Might not.
Wait, what was I going to say? Oh, here's the question. So Fields might come back next week. When's their bye? 2 weeks?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Week 14's their bye.
The Binado.
Claypool with Mooney maybe out for the year.
Claypool got shaken up too in the game.
He did, and his jersey was very dirty. If you guys saw that.
Well, I mean, he's got the letters POO in his last name. He's a dirty kid. He made a great contested catch earlier in the game. He might have been on his way to a great game. Instead, he didn't do anything after that contested catch. And he's even if he is the top target in this offense, what does that mean? Six targets per game? For him, that might mean 8 or 9 PPR points.
So no.
Okay.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for watching. The Packers prove my point. You don't go for it on 4th and 1 from your own 37-yard line. Mistake.
That's how Adamlytics.
I love Adamlytics. They're great. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you tomorrow with Beyond the Box Score on Fantasy Football Today.